an original story created exclusively for Golden Romance Empire. Sofia Martinez clutched her borrowed cocktail dress as she scanned the glittering ballroom. Feeling like an imposter among Manhattan's elite, her heart stopped when she spotted him. Daniel, the ex who had crushed her confidence with casual cruelty, now approaching with a statuesque blonde on his arm. Panic surged through her veins as his familiar smirk drew closer. Without thinking, Sofia crossed the crowded floor toward a tall stranger, standing alone by the champagne fountain, his expression distant and bored beneath perfectly styled, dark hair. His eyes widened in surprise as she gripped the lapels of his impeccable suit, whispered, "Please, just pretend," and pressed her lips against his. The kiss lasted only seconds, but when she pulled away, the intensity in his gaze made the entire room fade to a blur. She had no idea she had just entangled herself with Ethan Blackwood, the reclusive billionaire publisher whose empire was built on the very dreams she harbored in secret. Sofia's hands trembled as she accepted a flute of champagne from a passing waiter. The Museum of Modern Art fundraising gala sparkled around her, an ocean of designer gowns, diamond cufflinks, and practiced smiles. She didn't belong here. Her presence was courtesy of her roommate Mia, whose last-minute flu had landed Sofia with a non-transferable ticket and a borrowed dress that cost more than 3 months of her teacher's salary. "Just network," Mia had insisted between sneezes. "You never know who might help fund that bookstore cafe you're always talking about." Now, standing alone beneath the soaring ceiling, Sofia regretted her decision to come, until she saw him, Daniel Chen, her ex-boyfriend of 8 months, the investment banker who had systematically dismantled her confidence with comments about her cute little dreams and how she was wasting her potential teaching literature to high school students. The man who had broken up with her because she lacked ambition, and he was walking directly toward her, a willowy blonde clinging to his arm. "Sofia, is that you?" Daniel's voice carried the same condescending tone she remembered. "What a surprise to see you here." The blonde, wearing what Sofia recognized as this season's Valentino, gave her an appraising glance. "Daniel." Sofia's voice came out smaller than she intended. "This is Alessandra. She's heading up the new acquisitions team at Pearson." His emphasis on the prestigious publishing house was deliberate. "Alessandra, Sofia teaches English to teenagers." The way he said it made her career sound like a hobby. "How sweet," Alessandra murmured. Sofia felt herself shrinking under their gaze. The familiar sensation of inadequacy washed over her, until something inside rebelled. "Not tonight. Not again. If you'll excuse me," she said suddenly. "My date is waiting." Daniel's eyebrow arched. "Your date?" Without another word, Sofia turned and walked purposefully across the room. Panic rose in her chest as she realized she had nowhere to go, no one to claim. Her eyes darted desperately until they locked on a man standing alone by the champagne fountain. Tall, with dark hair and a perfectly tailored tuxedo, he exuded an aura of detachment from the surrounding revelry. His expression suggested he found the entire affair tedious. Perfect. Someone equally uncomfortable. Before she could reconsider, Sofia approached him, champagne sloshing in her glass. "I'm so sorry to bother you," she whispered urgently. "But my ex is watching, and I told him I was here with someone. Please, pretend to be my date for just 2 minutes." The stranger's eyes, a startling shade of gray, widened slightly. Before he could respond, Sofia heard Daniel's voice behind her. "Sofia, aren't you going to introduce us?" In sheer desperation, Sofia did the unthinkable. She placed her champagne on a nearby table, grabbed the lapels of the stranger's jacket, and kissed him. It was meant to be quick, a peck for show. But the moment their lips touched, something electric passed between them. The stranger stiffened initially, then softened, his hand moving to the small of her back with surprising gentleness. When Sofia pulled away, breathless and mortified, she found herself staring into eyes that had transformed from cool detachment to smoldering intensity. I'm so sorry," she stammered. The corner of his mouth lifted in a half-smile that transformed his entire face. "Don't be." He turned to Daniel, extending his hand with effortless authority. "Ethan, and you are?" Daniel seemed suddenly diminished. "Daniel Chen. This is Alessandra Pearson." "Pleasure," Ethan said, though his tone suggested otherwise. His arm slid around Sofia's waist with casual possessiveness. Sofia and I were just discussing whether to stay or head to that new jazz club downtown. What do you think, darling? Stay or go? The endearment rolled off his tongue with such conviction that even Sofia almost believed they were together. I think we should go, she replied, amazed at how steady her voice sounded. Daniel cleared his throat. Well, we won't keep you. Good seeing you, Sofia. As they walked away, Sofia exhaled shakily. Thank you. That was... I don't know what came over me. Ethan's expression was unreadable. Most interesting introduction I've had at one of these tedious events. He studied her face. Though I usually prefer to know a woman's name before she kisses me, heat flooded Sofia's cheeks. Sofia Martinez, and I really am sorry. Ethan, he replied simply, offering no last name. Would you like to make our escape real? I know a place with excellent jazz and deplorable champagne. Sofia hesitated. The rational part of her brain screamed warnings about leaving with a stranger, but something about his eyes, the way they had softened when he looked at her, made her nod. Yes, she said, I would. As Ethan guided her toward the exit, his hand warm against her back, Sofia felt a curious lightness. For the first time in months, she didn't feel small. Neither noticed the photographer, discreetly capturing their departure, or knew that by morning, speculation about the mysterious woman on the arm of Ethan Blackwood, billionaire publisher and notorious recluse, would flood every gossip column in the city. 3 weeks later, Sofia pushed open the door of Cornerstone Books, breathing in the comforting scent of paper and binding glue. The tiny bookshop in Greenwich Village was her sanctuary, a place where ambition was measured in stories consumed, rather than dollars earned. Morning, Howard, she called to the elderly owner, who waved from behind a stack of new arrivals. Your special order came in, he replied, gesturing to a wrapped package on the counter. Sofia had almost succeeded in forgetting about the gala incident. Almost. The mysterious Ethan had taken her to a hole-in-the-wall jazz club where they'd talked until closing time. He'd been attentive, intelligent, and surprisingly easy to talk to, asking about her teaching, her favorite books, her dreams. Not once had he made her feel inadequate for her career choice. At the end of the night, he'd put her in a taxi with a simple, I enjoyed meeting you, Sofia Martinez. No exchange of numbers, no promises to call. Just a moment of connection that had left her both relieved and strangely disappointed. She was reaching for her book when the shop bell jingled. Looking up, Sofia froze. Ethan stood in the doorway, more casually dressed than at the gala in dark jeans and a gray sweater that matched his eyes, but no less striking. Recognition flickered across his face. Sofia? Hi. She clutched her package like a shield. What brings you here? First editions, he answered, gesturing to the rare book section. Howard has excellent taste. Howard appeared beside them, beaming. Mr. Blackwood, your usual Thursday visit. I've set aside that Hemingway we discussed. Blackwood. The name registered vaguely in Sofia's mind, but she couldn't place it. Sofia's one of my regulars, too, Howard continued. Never seen two people with such similar taste in obscure poetry. Ethan's eyes never left Sofia's face. Is that so? I should go, Sofia said quickly. Papers to grade. Let me walk you out. Ethan's request was gentle, but insistent. Outside, autumn sunshine bathed the street in golden light. Sofia turned to him, suddenly nervous. So, Blackwood. Should I know that name? A shadow crossed his face. Perhaps. Does it matter? I suppose not. She hesitated. Thank you again for that night. You saved me from complete humiliation. By allowing you to kiss a total stranger, amusement danced in his eyes. Hardly a sacrifice on my part. Sofia laughed despite herself. Well, when you put it that way, have coffee with me, he said suddenly. There's a place around the corner that makes decent espresso. She should say no. She had papers to grade, lesson plans to finish, but curiosity won out. All right, one coffee. One coffee turned into 2 hours of conversation. Ethan asked about her teaching, genuinely interested in her methods for engaging reluctant readers. Sofia found herself explaining her dream of opening a bookstore cafe, a place where literature and community could intersect. I want to create a space where books aren't intimidating, she explained, hands animated. where a teenager can discover poetry alongside a retired professor, where stories matter more than status. Why haven't you done it? Ethan asked. Sofia's enthusiasm dimmed. Reality, startup costs, business loans, real estate prices in New York. Teaching pays the bills, but barely. You'd be surprised what's possible with the right plan, he said thoughtfully. Says the man who can afford first editions, she teased, then grew serious. What do you do, Ethan? Besides rescue women at galas? He hesitated. Publishing primarily. Investments. Successful, I take it. I've been fortunate, he answered carefully. Sofia sensed his reluctance and didn't press. Everyone had things they preferred to keep private. What mattered was how at ease she felt with him, how he listened as though her words had weight. As they parted, Ethan asked for her number. I'd like to continue our conversation, if you're willing. Sofia hesitated only briefly before entering her contact into his phone. I'd like that too. Walking home, Sofia couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan was holding something back. But then, wasn't she doing the same? She hadn't told him about Daniel's casual cruelty, about how his dismissal of her dreams had made her question their validity. Some vulnerabilities were earned, not freely given. Her phone buzzed with a text. Howard says you have excellent taste in Neruda. Dinner tomorrow. Sofia smiled and typed a reply. Only if you promise to debate the merits of his later works. Challenge accepted, came the immediate response. That night, Sofia finally Googled Ethan Blackwood. Her heart stopped as headlines filled her screen. Blackwood Publishing Empire expands with digital acquisition. Reclusive billionaire Ethan Blackwood, rarely seen in public. Blackwood named among top 30 under 40 in Forbes. Accompanying the articles were photos of her Ethan, serious, remote, powerful, at corporate events and charity galas. The man she'd kissed on impulse, who discussed poetry with the reverence of a scholar, rather than the calculation of a businessman, was one of the wealthiest publishers in the country. Sofia closed her laptop, unsure whether to feel betrayed or simply naive. Tomorrow she would discover which Ethan was real, the attentive man from the bookshop or the billionaire from the headlines. You should have told me, Sofia said, setting down her fork. They sat in a small Italian restaurant in the West Village. Ethan's choice, unpretentious, despite the Michelin star discreetly displayed by the door. Ethan's expression remained controlled, but his fingers tightened around his wine glass. Would it have changed anything? That you own one of the largest publishing conglomerates in the country, that you're worth, she lowered her voice, billions. Yes, it might have been relevant information. Is that how you define people? By their net worth? The question stung. Of course not. But omission is still deception, Ethan. He leaned forward. The night we met, you saw me as just a man, not a balance sheet. Do you know how rare that is? Sofia softened despite herself. Over the past month, they had fallen into a rhythm that felt surprisingly natural. Weekend mornings in quiet cafes discussing books. Walks through the Metropolitan Museum, where Ethan knew the stories behind obscure paintings. Late-night phone calls, where they debated everything from education reform to the perfect pizza topping. Not once had he flaunted his wealth. His apartment, though in an exclusive building, was minimalist rather than ostentatious. He drove a luxury car, yes, but kept it for years rather than upgrading seasonally. His most extravagant possessions were his books. First editions handled with reverent care. I understand privacy, Sofia conceded. But we've spent weeks together. You know about my family, my students, my dreams. I had to Google to learn who you really are. That's not who I really am, Ethan countered, frustration edging his voice. That's what I have, not who I am. Then who are you, Ethan Blackwood? His eyes met hers with unexpected vulnerability. Someone who's never been as comfortable with anyone as I am with you. The simple honesty in his voice disarmed her. Sofia reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. Just, no more secrets, please. He turned his palm upward, interlacing their fingers. No more secrets. Over dessert, Ethan answered her questions about growing up with privilege, inheriting his father's publishing house at 25, expanding into digital media, while preserving traditional imprints. He spoke of the isolation that came with his position, the performative friendships, the women interested in his portfolio, rather than his person. "That night at the gala," he said, "I was hiding from a board member's daughter. Her father has been trying to orchestrate a merger of both business and personal variety." Sofia laughed. "So I rescued you as much as you rescued me." "Precisely why I didn't want to leave when you suggested it." As weeks turned to months, Sofia found herself falling for the man beneath the billionaire facade. Ethan was brilliant, but socially awkward, powerful yet gentle, confident in business, but endearingly uncertain in matters of the heart. He began leaving books on her doorstep, not expensive first editions, but worn paperbacks with notes in the margins highlighting passages he wanted to discuss. She introduced him to her favorite students at literary events, watching with quiet pride as he engaged with their ideas, rather than dismissing them as most adults did. On a snowy December evening, Sofia invited him to her modest apartment for the first time. She'd spent hours cooking her grandmother's paella. Nervous about hosting a man who regularly dined at the world's finest restaurants, Ethan arrived with a bottle of wine and a small package. "For your collection," he said, handing her the wrapped gift. Inside was a vintage copy of 100 Years of Solitude. Not a first edition, but a well-loved translation with a handwritten note from the previous owner about reading it during a summer in Colombia. "It has history," Ethan explained, "like all the best stories." That night, after dinner, they sat on her second-hand couch talking until the early hours. When Ethan finally kissed her, really kissed her, not the desperate performance of their first meeting, Sofia felt something shift between them. This wasn't just attraction. It was recognition. "Stay," she whispered against his lips. In the quiet darkness of her bedroom, Ethan's careful control gave way to something raw and honest. His hands traced her body with reverent attention, as though memorizing every curve. When they finally came together, Sofia understood what it meant to be truly seen by another person. Later, as snow continued falling outside her window, Ethan held her close. "I've never let anyone see me like this," he confessed into her hair. "Vulnerable, uncertain." "I like you uncertain," Sofia replied, pressing a kiss to his chest. "It makes you human." For 6 blissful weeks, they existed in a bubble of their own making. Ethan began leaving clothes at her apartment. Sofia kept a toothbrush at his. They established favorite restaurants, inside jokes, routines that felt like building something permanent. Then came the charity auction at the same hotel where they'd first met. Sofia wore a dress Ethan had bought her, simple but elegant. They entered together, his hand protectively at her waist. For the first time, Sofia didn't feel out of place among the wealthy elite. She belonged, not because of Ethan's status, but because of his unwavering presence beside her. Neither noticed the photographer capturing their intimate moment. Ethan tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, Sofia looking up at him with unguarded affection. The next morning, Sofia's phone exploded with notifications, texts from friends, calls from her mother, even an email from Daniel. Confused, she opened her browser to find headlines screaming across every gossip site. Billionaire bachelor Ethan Blackwood's mystery woman identified. Reclusive publishing magnate dating public school teacher. Inside Ethan Blackwood's secret romance. Who is Sofia Martinez? Accompanying the articles were photos. Intimate moments stolen without their knowledge. And most damaging of all, speculation about her motives, her background, her worthiness of a man like Ethan Blackwood. Sofia felt the carefully constructed world they'd built together begin to crumble. Sofia stared at her phone, nausea rising as she scrolled through comments, speculating about her relationship with Ethan. Gold digger, social climber. How long before he trades up? A text from Ethan appeared. "I'm sorry. Are you okay?" Before she could respond, her doorbell rang. Ethan stood in the hallway, his normally immaculate appearance disheveled, as though he'd dressed in haste. "I came as soon as I saw." Stepping inside. "My PR team is handling it. They'll issue statements, threaten legal action." "Your PR team?" Sofia's voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. "Of course you have a PR team." Ethan reached for her, but she stepped back. "Sofia, please. This isn't my fault, isn't it?" The hurt crystallized into anger. "You knew this could happen. You've lived with this scrutiny your entire life. I was just unprepared." I never wanted this for you, Ethan said, running a hand through his hair. I thought we could keep things private longer. That's just it, Ethan. Nothing about your life stays private, and you knew that. Sofia hugged herself, suddenly cold. My students are seeing these articles. Their parents. My principal called this morning asking if I needed support with the media situation. Ethan's expression hardened. I'll fix this. By buying every tabloid that printed the story. By having your lawyers threaten anyone who mentions my name? She shook her head. That's not fixing it. That's controlling it. Controlling me. What do you want me to do, Sofia? I can't change who I am. No. But you could have prepared me. You could have been honest about what being with you really means. Tears threatened, but she blinked them back. I feel like I've been thrown into deep water without warning. Ethan moved toward her desk, where her laptop displayed one of the articles. His jaw tightened as he read the speculation about Sofia's background, her career, her motives for dating him. None of this matters, he said finally. These people, their opinions, they're nothing. To you, maybe. You've had a lifetime to develop immunity. Sofia's voice broke. But I teach teenagers, Ethan. I can't have my personal life splashed across the internet like some tawdry reality show. I'll make it stop. The cold determination in his voice sent a chill through her. That's exactly what I'm afraid of, Sofia whispered. Your solution to everything is to exert control, with money, with power, with influence. But you can't control this, Ethan. You can't control us. He stared at her, something desperate in his eyes. What are you saying? I'm saying I need space, time to think about whether I can live like this, constantly exposed, constantly judged. Sofia, please. Ethan's voice held a vulnerability she'd never heard before. Don't let them do this to us. It's not them. It's the situation. A situation you understood, but I didn't. Sofia moved to the door. Please go, Ethan. I need to be alone right now. For a moment, she thought he might refuse. Then, with visible restraint, he nodded. I'll respect your space. But this isn't over, Sofia. After he left, Sofia collapsed onto her couch, finally allowing the tears to come. She loved him. That much she knew with devastating clarity. But loving Ethan Blackwood meant accepting a life under constant scrutiny. A life where her every flaw would be magnified for public consumption. The following days brought no relief. Flower arrangements appeared at her door, each more extravagant than the last. A rare first edition of her favorite novel arrived by courier. Even a letter from the superintendent praising her teaching methods and offering a substantial raise. All Ethan's doing. All attempts to fix a problem with resources rather than understanding. When Sofia didn't respond, the gestures grew more dramatic. An invitation to a private literary retreat in the Berkshires. A custom-designed blueprint for her dream bookstore cafe, complete with financial projections showing its viability. She returned everything with a simple note. I need time, not things. 2 weeks after their separation, Sofia spotted Ethan outside her school. He stood across the street, watching as she chatted with Mark, the new English teacher who had been helping her with the senior literature club. Mark said something that made Sofia laugh, touching her arm briefly. From across the street, she saw Ethan's expression darken before he turned and walked away. That night, her phone rang. Against her better judgment, she answered. Who is he? Ethan's voice was tightly controlled. A colleague, Sofia replied, anger rising. And even if he were more, you have no right to question me. We're taking space, remember. I've given you space. I've given you time. What more do you want from me, Sofia? I want you to understand that you can't buy your way out of this problem, she said quietly. I want you to recognize that your wealth and power are exactly what's coming between us. The silence stretched between them. I'm afraid, Ethan finally admitted, his voice barely audible. I'm afraid of losing you. The simple honesty of his confession broke something inside her. Then stop trying to control everything and just be with me, Ethan. As equals. After they hung up, Sofia stared at her ceiling, wondering if a man who had spent his life wielding power could ever truly understand what it meant to surrender it. 3 days later, Sofia opened her door to find Ethan standing in the hallway. No flowers, no extravagant gifts, just a man in jeans and a sweater, holding a manila folder. 5 minutes, he said. That's all I'm asking. Sofia hesitated, then stepped aside to let him in. He looked different, the polished veneer replaced by something more authentic. There were shadows under his eyes, and his usual perfect posture showed signs of strain. "You look tired," she observed. "I haven't been sleeping well." Ethan remained standing, as though uncertain of his welcome. "I've been thinking about what you said, about my trying to control everything with money, and—" He placed the folder on her coffee table. "I have a proposal. Not that kind," he added quickly, seeing her expression. "A business proposal. For your bookstore-café." Sofia approached cautiously. "Ethan, just look at it, please." She opened the folder to find a business plan. Not the glossy, professionally designed version he'd sent earlier, but a handwritten draft with notes in the margins. Coffee stains on one corner, and post-its marking various sections. "I wrote it myself," Ethan explained. "No consultants, no financial team. Just me, researching what it actually takes to start a small business." Sofia flipped through the pages, noting the careful calculations for overhead costs, projected revenue, and marketing strategies. "Why?" "Because I want to help you achieve your dream, but on your terms." Ethan took a deep breath. "I'm offering my knowledge and experience, not my money." She looked up skeptical. "You're a billionaire, Ethan. Your entire world is money." "My world is publishing," he corrected gently. "Books, stories, the same things you value. The money is incidental." Sofia nearly laughed. "Billions are hardly incidental. What I mean is, I know the industry. I understand the business model. I can help you navigate the process without financing it myself." His eyes held hers. "I want to be your partner, not your patron." The sincerity in his voice gave her pause. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "Working together to build your business plan, approaching banks for loans, real loans, with interest rates and repayment schedules, finding affordable commercial space, all the things any entrepreneur would do." He gestured to the folder. "I've already started the research." Against her better judgment, Sofia was intrigued. "And what do you get out of this arrangement?" "You." The simplicity of his answer caught her off guard. A chance to prove I can be in this relationship as just a man, not a billionaire. Sofia studied him, searching for signs of manipulation. Finding none, she nodded slowly. "I'm not making any promises about us, but I'll consider the business partnership." Relief softened Ethan's features. "That's all I'm asking." Over the following weeks, they established a new routine. 3 evenings a week. They met at Sofia's apartment to work on the business plan. Ethan brought takeout. Sofia provided coffee. They spread papers across her tiny dining table, arguing over profit margins and inventory systems with the same passion they once reserved for literary debates. Gradually, the tension between them eased. Ethan proved to be a patient teacher, explaining financial concepts without condescension. Sofia brought her educator's perspective, envisioning programming that would attract diverse customers. "You need to factor in community events," she insisted one night, pushing aside half-eaten containers of Thai food. "Poetry readings, children's story hours, book clubs, things that build loyalty, beyond just selling coffee and books." Ethan nodded, making notes. "Good point. Those create emotional investment from customers, which translates to repeat business." Sofia smiled. "Always the businessman, always the idealist," he countered, but his tone was affectionate. As their business plan took shape, so did a new understanding between them. This Ethan was different, more open, less guarded. He shared stories about his childhood insecurities, his complicated relationship with his father, his fear that people only valued him for his wealth. Sofia, in turn, revealed her deeper vulnerabilities. How Daniel's dismissal of her dreams had made her question her own worth. How she sometimes felt trapped between her passion for teaching and her desire to create something of her own. One night, working late, Ethan looked up from his laptop to find Sofia asleep on the couch, surrounded by market research reports. Gently, he covered her with a throw blanket, allowing himself a moment to study her face, peaceful in sleep, free from the wariness that still sometimes clouded her expression when she looked at him. He was falling in love with her all over again, but differently this time, more deeply, more honestly. When the business plan was finally complete, They began approaching banks for loans. Sofia insisted on attending the meetings alone, though Ethan helped prepare her presentation. The first rejection came from a mid-sized bank downtown. Insufficient collateral, the loan officer explained, barely glancing at the meticulously prepared projections. The second bank cited market saturation as their reason for declining. The third questioned the viability of independent bookstores in the digital age. By the sixth rejection, Sofia's confidence was faltering. She returned to her apartment to find Ethan waiting, his expression hopeful, until he saw her face. "Another no," she said, dropping her portfolio on the table. "This one suggested I find a more realistic dream." Ethan's jaw tightened. "They're idiots. They're practical." Sofia sank onto the couch beside him. "Maybe this is the universe telling me to stick to teaching." "The universe doesn't reject loan applications, Sofia. Bankers do." Ethan took her hand. "Bankers who lack vision and creativity. Or bankers who understand risk." She leaned against his shoulder, exhausted. "Maybe my dream is just that, a dream." Ethan turned to face her, his expression serious. "Do you still want this? Not for me, not to prove anything to Daniel or anyone else. For yourself." Sofia thought about the countless hours they'd spent planning, the vision they'd crafted together, the space she could create for readers and dreamers like herself. "Yes," she said finally, "I still want it. Then we keep trying." Ethan's voice held quiet determination. "There are other banks, other funding options." Sofia looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the powerful billionaire who could solve her problems with a phone call, but a partner, willing to walk the harder path beside her. For the first time since their separation, she leaned forward and kissed him. The final rejection came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Sofia sat across from the loan officer, a woman this time, which had given her hope, and watched as she closed the folder containing their business plan. "Your concept is charming, Miss Martinez," the woman said, not unkindly, "but without substantial collateral or a proven track record in retail, First National simply can't take the risk." Sofia nodded mechanically, gathering her materials with practiced composure. She'd become accustomed to rejection over the past 2 months. 12 banks, 12 variations of no. Outside, she didn't immediately hail a cab despite the downpour. Instead, she stood under the bank's awning, watching rain cascade from the edges like tears she refused to shed. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "How did it go?" Sofia couldn't bring herself to respond. Not yet. Not when admitting defeat to Ethan meant admitting it to herself. She arrived at her apartment soaking wet and emotionally drained. Ethan was waiting. One look at her face telling him everything. "I'm done," Sofia said, dropping her sodden portfolio on the floor. "No more banks, no more rejections, no more humiliation." Ethan approached cautiously. "Sofia, don't." She held up a hand. "Don't tell me to keep trying, or that the next one might say yes. 12 banks, Ethan. 12 professionals looking at our numbers and saying this dream isn't viable. They're wrong. Are they?" Sofia's voice broke. "Or am I just being naive? A schoolteacher with no business experience, thinking she can succeed where established retailers are failing." Ethan guided her to the couch, wrapping a throw blanket around her shoulders. "This isn't about experience. It's about passion, vision, and determination, all of which you have in abundance. Passion doesn't pay rent on commercial space," Sofia said bitterly. "Vision doesn't stock inventory." They sat in silence, rain pattering against the windows. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice careful. "There's another option." Sofia tensed. "If you're about to offer to fund this yourself." "I'm not." He met her gaze steadily. "But I do have an idea. It requires trust." "Trust in what?" "In me. Not my money, but my judgment." Ethan took her hands. "Will you let me make one call? Just one. I promise it won't involve my personal funds or calling in favors." Sofia studied his face, searching for signs of the controlling billionaire she'd feared he would always be. Instead, she saw only sincerity. "One call," she agreed reluctantly. Ethan stepped onto her tiny balcony to make the call, his back to her as rain continued falling. When he returned, his expression was unreadable. "What did you do?" Sofia asked. "I called James Werner at Metropolitan Bank." Sofia frowned. "We already tried them. They rejected us last week." "I know. I asked for a meeting tomorrow, with both of us." Ethan held her gaze. Not as Ethan Blackwood, the investor, but as Ethan Blackwood, the publishing professional who believes this business model is sound. I don't understand. I've staked my professional reputation on your business plan, he explained. Not my money, not my influence, my credibility. I told Werner that in my professional opinion, your concept isn't just viable. It's the future of independent bookselling. Sofia stared at him, processing his words. You risked your reputation. For my bookstore? For you, Ethan corrected softly. Because I believe in you, in your vision, and because I needed to prove, to both of us, that I can support you without controlling the outcome. The meeting at Metropolitan Bank the next morning felt different from the start. James Werner, the senior loan officer who had dismissed them previously, now listened attentively as Sofia presented their business plan. Ethan sat beside her, offering occasional insights, but primarily letting her lead. When she finished, Werner leaned back in his chair. Mr. Blackwood, you're really vouching for this concept, putting your name behind it. Completely, Ethan replied without hesitation. Ms. Martinez has identified a niche that combines community building with retail in a way that's both innovative and sustainable. Werner studied them both. And you're not investing personally. No, this is Ms. Martinez's business. I'm here strictly as a consultant with industry expertise. After a series of pointed questions about cash flow projections and marketing strategy, Werner closed the folder. We'll need to review the numbers once more, but I believe we can approve a small business loan with reasonable terms. Sofia barely contained her shock. You're saying yes? Provisionally, Werner clarified. There will be conditions, of course, but yes. Metropolitan Bank is prepared to fund your venture. Outside the bank, Sofia turned to Ethan, emotions warring within her. What exactly did you say to him yesterday? The truth that I've reviewed dozens of business plans in publishing and retail, and yours is exceptional. Ethan's expression remained neutral. I didn't threaten bribe or leverage our banking relationship. I simply offered my professional assessment, and that was enough. My opinion carries weight in certain circles, he acknowledged, but the plan stands on its own merits, Sofia. Werner wouldn't risk his position on a bad investment, regardless of who recommended it. Sofia processed this, trying to determine if she felt grateful or manipulated. So what happens now? Now you sign the loan documents, find a location, and build your dream. Ethan hesitated. With or without my continued involvement, that's entirely your choice. The ball was in her court, a position Sofia hadn't often found herself in with Ethan Blackwood. She could thank him politely and proceed alone, maintaining her independence, or she could recognize that he had found a way to help without overwhelming her, to support without controlling. I'd like you involved, she said finally. As a partner, equal voices, equal effort. Relief and joy transformed Ethan's face. He reached for her hand, interlacing their fingers. Equal it is. 6 months later, Sofia stood in the center of Chapter and Verse, surveying the space that had transformed from a vacant storefront to her dream realized. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with carefully curated titles. Mismatched vintage tables and chairs created cozy reading nooks. The scent of fresh coffee and baked goods wafted from the cafe counter where her cousin Miguel was training 2 baristas. Opening night was an hour away. Friends, family, and curious neighbors would soon fill the space, celebrating what many had deemed impossible, an independent bookstore cafe, opening in the age of digital dominance. Sofia felt a presence behind her and turned to find Ethan arranging a display of local authors' works. Throughout the renovation process, he had been there, hanging shelves on weekends, negotiating with vendors, staying up late to fine-tune inventory systems. Never once had he attempted to take over or impose his vision. This was her dream. He had simply helped build the foundation. Nervous? He asked, straightening a stack of novels. Terrified, Sofia admitted. What if no one comes? Ethan smiled. Then we'll drink all the champagne ourselves and read aloud to each other until morning. The we wasn't lost on Sofia. Their relationship had evolved alongside the business, rebuilt on stronger foundations of respect and equality. Ethan had learned to listen before solving, to support without controlling. Sofia had learned to accept help without fearing loss of agency. The press had eventually lost interest in their relationship, moving on to more dramatic celebrity pairings. Occasionally, business publications mentioned Ethan Blackwood's surprising investment in independent bookselling, misunderstanding his role in Sofia's venture. Neither bothered to correct them. What existed between them was private, a partnership in the truest sense. "I have something for you," Ethan said, reaching into his jacket pocket. "A grand opening gift." He handed her a small wrapped package. Inside was a vintage key on a silver chain. "It's the key to the first Blackwood Books location," he explained. "My grandfather kept it after they expanded." He said it reminded him that every empire starts with a single door. Sofia's throat tightened with emotion. "Ethan, I can't accept this. It's your family history, which is why I want you to have it." He took the necklace, moving behind her to fasten it around her neck. Some legacies are meant to be shared. As the key settled against her collarbone, Sofia was struck by the symmetry of their journey, from a desperate kiss between strangers to this moment of genuine connection. They had come full circle, returning to the essence of what had drawn them together: a shared love of stories and the courage to create new ones. The door chimes jingled as the first guests began to arrive. Sofia took a deep breath, ready to welcome them into the space she had created, with hard work, determination, and the support of a man who had learned that the greatest power was in vulnerability. Ethan squeezed her hand. "Ready?" Sofia nodded, her heart full. "Ready." Together, they stepped forward to greet their future, page by unwritten page.